Excuse me, I'm sorry. I think one of the greatest inventions of modern man is Tupperware. Anybody else here like Tupperware? I love Tupperware. We got all kinds of Tupperware at our house, all shapes and sizes. You can use Tupperware for so many things, right? You can use it to store all kinds of things. But most of us use it to store what? Leftovers. Food, that's right. We use it to store leftovers. And I'm so glad, because I hated, before Tupperware, I hated, you remember that plastic? Some of you probably still use that plastic. And you have a bowl or something, and you try to save those leftovers, and you try to stretch that paper over there, and as soon as I got one side sealed, the other side came up. Anybody else have that problem? I'm glad I'm not by myself. That was the most frustrating thing. I wanted to throw the food away. I was like, this ain't worth it. I mean, I'd be sitting there fighting that thing for 10 minutes, and I burned up more energy than was in the bowl. But we don't have to do that today, do we? We can put it in Tupperware, and we set it in the refrigerator, which is a great thing. Right? Because we're going to eat that later, because that's some good food in there, right? It's important to us, right? So we put that in there, and then what happens? We forget it's there. And so we get some more food, right? We have more leftovers, and we put them in there, pushing those other leftovers to the bag. That's right. And then we get some more leftovers, and we put them in there, and pushed farther to the back, and gets moved farther and farther until it's in like a time zone. We know it's in there. We have no idea where it's at, right? We know it's in there. We probably have forgotten about everything that we have in our refrigerator. Sometimes you get all kinds of surprises when you look in your refrigerator, but we forget. We forget what's in there. It's behind Grandma's pickles and a bottle of orange juice somewhere. It's way back in the back. And we just completely forget about it. Until what?
Sauce and stink.
Oh, yeah. One day we go there, we open the refrigerator, we're like, what's that smell? Something's stinking in my refrigerator. That's when we usually clean the refrigerator out. We go looking through there, and there it is, right in the back of the refrigerator. And you can tell immediately something's wrong, because it looks nothing like what you put in that container, right? All of a sudden, I don't know what you put in there, but this item is green with some white fuzz on it. Ever been there? Ever been there? So it's definitely the cause of the stench that's coming from your refrigerator. Now, I know what you do next, right? You back out of the refrigerator, close the door slowly, you go put on your tie-back suit, right? And you get you a gas mask and some rubber gloves, and then you ease your way back into that refrigerator, because you don't want whatever's in there getting on you, do you? No, of course not. Then you remove that, you go to the trash can, and you're beating that thing and finding a spoon or something, because you don't want to touch it, right? It is so nasty. You've been there, haven't you? Everybody's been there, right? Great memory, right? It just makes you want to go to lunch right now, doesn't it? I'm sorry I brought up that memory. I really am, but aren't you glad it's not third Sunday? But all of us have been there where we had to remove that stench from the refrigerator, and you're like, Pastor, why are you getting into my personal business talking about my refrigerator and my leftovers and my Tupperware? So I'm not. What I want to do is really get personal and talk about the stink that's in each of us. Those things that are buried deep down inside, and we have a tendency to forget about it. Forget about it until the stink gets to be so bad that what happens? It spills to the outside. Right? Those things that are buried within us that we're not supposed to have in there, that aren't supposed to be taking up space in us. They're no good. They serve no benefit. And we need to remove them. Right? A lot of times we're so worried about what's on the outside that we forget that what's on the inside is important, don't we? It's not just what we look like, good or bad. It's about what's inside here. What rests in our heart that determines who we are, isn't it? And that's hard to say. A lot of us have spent our whole life worrying about what other people think. Do we have fancy enough clothes or cars or houses? We're so worried about impressing other people, people we don't even know. You know, you can be going to a party where you don't know anybody, or you may know one person, but you'll spend hours getting ready. So you can what? Impress the people who are there, the people you don't even know, right? Well, why do we spend so much time worrying about those outside things, right? Look at Christmas time. I got to have the best light show on my house for you or for the people who drive by. So they can say, look at that guy's light show. He sure put a lot of work into that, right? But we spend time and time and time, and we get caught up in this rat race, and we worry about things that are on the outside and how we look and how we're perceived, how people see us. We'll spend a whole lot of time in front of the mirror trying to determine, do I look good enough to go out in public? But we won't spend any time looking in the mirror of the Bible to find out if we're clean enough or we're doing the right things to go out in public. Somebody say amen. 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 You see, and even when we do, and when we mess up or we go outside, we don't want anybody telling us about it if we don't look good, right? Amen. We don't want to, amen. Yeah, don't be commenting on my looks now. But we don't want anybody telling us that we're falling short or that we're doing something wrong. I remember the story of a boy. He was coming in from recess, and the teacher, his hands were all dirty. And his teacher said, Johnny, go wash your hands. Go wash your hands. What would you do if I had come in here looking like that with dirt all over me? And Johnny looked up at her and said, well, I'd have probably been polite enough not to say a word about it. You know? And sometimes we wish people would be polite enough not to say something about it, but I'm here to tell you, I'm going to say something about it today. But I ain't going to say something about your hands if they're clean, or I ain't going to say if your clothes are dirty, your hair's not washed. I'm here to talk about what's inside. Because that's what Jesus found that was important. Not that Kenny finds that important, because what I think is irrelevant. But what did Jesus say in the red letters? If you got one of those Bibles with red letters, this is what Jesus was saying. Right? This isn't what Kenny's saying. This is what Jesus was saying. And he's been, to get you to the story, he's there, and these Pharisees and these teachers of the law come and they're talking about his disciples who are eating with unwashed hands. Ain't you ever ate with dirty hands? Really? Okay, I got some honest people here. Okay, because I remember coming in, the first thing Mom's going to say is what? Go wash your hands, time to eat. Go wash your hands, time to eat. I didn't know she was biblical. I didn't know she was following these old Jewish traditions, but I guess somewhere she had found them. But anyway, so they're criticizing him because they're coming to him asking, why aren't your disciples washing their hands? Why aren't they following the traditions? Why aren't they following the rules and eating with their hands? I assume they were probably hungry. But that's not what Jesus says, you hypocrites, that y'all are hypocrites. He said, it's just like Isaiah wrote. Now, let me read you what Isaiah wrote, because that wasn't in our, in the thing. It says, these people honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men. Now, what do you think that means? What do you think that means? It means they show up and they're giving me lip service, aren't they? They show up and they're going through the motions, aren't they? They're following the rules of the church, aren't they? They're following the traditions, but in here, there's nothing. It says their heart is far away from me. Their lips worship me, but their hearts are far away from me. And I want to make something very clear. Jesus isn't trashing the traditions of the church or the temple. He's not. So that's not what this is about. Nor is it about dirty hands. Okay? Neither one of those is what this is about. But what Jesus is talking about is that what the Pharisees have done is taken man-made rules and made them above the commandments of what God told them to do. We only need need to go to the 2 commandments that Jesus gave us. What? Love God with all your heart, all your soul, everything you got, right? Love God. And then what does he say? Love your neighbor. Love your neighbor. Love your neighbor. And they're not following those rules. In other words, they're taking the rules that God gave them, and at that time, the 10 commandments, and they've added all this man-made stuff to where people can't even breathe. There's so many rules to follow. So many traditions to follow. Like I said, traditions in churches aren't bad. A lot of times they point us back in the right direction. They help us to refocus. They help us to remember that we're in what? Worship. That this is a worship service. That we've come here and gathered to worship, and we do certain things to remind us of that. Certain words to remind us. We do certain things to remind us that we need to turn our hearts to God, right? So traditions aren't bad in themselves, but when traditions take over and we forget to love our neighbor, when we forget to love God, when we just go through the motions where we show up on Sunday and we spend 2 hours in the building, and then we go, okay, check that box, I'm done, see you next week, God. Don't want anything else to do with you. Unless there's an emergency, then I'll give you a holler. You know, then we need to talk. At that point, we're going to need to talk, right? And the more important it becomes, the louder we talk, don't we? You know, the louder all of a sudden we become really impatient if God doesn't come and answer us immediately. Amen. I mean, we were at Costco last night, and there was a little boy who was lost, and we were sitting there at the eating area. You've ever been to Costco? And he was looking for his mom and dad. And at first he started off calling me. He said, "Dad?" And he walked a little bit, and he looked. "Dad?" And he walked a little farther, and he looked. "Dad?" And with each step, it got louder, and you could tell that that's when you knew that this little boy was lost. His parents, he had lost sight of his parents, and he didn't know. And he was about 4 or 5, so he wasn't like in full panic like we get like that. But a lot of times when we're praying to God, we get just like that. God, I need this. And God, I need you to intervene. God, it's me. You remember me? I was at church last Sunday. I need you to intervene. God, are you hearing this at all? I really need you to intervene. That's kind of how we get, isn't it? All of a sudden, what's important to us needs to be important to God right now, isn't it? Right? Isn't that how we do? You see, and that's okay. Because you know what? God is a 24/7 God. He hears you each and every day. If you're praying, if you're asking for His help, if you need Him, He's there. Even if you only show up for 2 hours a week, He's still there. 24/7. He's just waiting to hear from you. Right? He's waiting for you to come to Him. You see, because God's more than just church. It's more than just religion. He doesn't want you to just be showing up for church on Sunday and then leaving here and leaving Him behind. How many of us walk out of this building each Sunday and we leave God in this box, this building, saying, see you next week, and we forget to go out and do the things that God's commanded of us, right? We forget to go out and love our neighbor, right? We forget to go out and express that love that God's shown into our hearts, into the life of others. And if you're doing that, then you're just paying lip service. You know, we don't need to worry about being religious Christians. We need to worry about being real Christians. We need to worry if we're worshiping every day in our words and our actions and what we do and what we say. You see, because what's going to happen is if we're dirty on the inside, if you haven't cleaned out your Tupperware, if you haven't cleaned out those things that are weighing you down, those things that separate you from God, what's going to happen to those things? They're going to rise up, right? And they're going to take over your whole being. Much like if you left that Tupperware, that science project, unattended in that refrigerator, before long, the stink of that box, of that small Tupperware box, would take over your whole refrigerator, wouldn't it? The stink would spread to everything else would be spoiled, everything else would be rotten, and pretty soon you wouldn't be able to open that without it spilling out, right? And then it would work on your house, right? If you left the door open, it would work on the whole house. You see, rotten things don't go away accidentally, do they? Rotten things have to be removed. And it has to be a priority for you to remove it, right? If I ask you what's a priority in life, I don't have to even ask you. I can go look at your checking account. And I can tell you what's a priority for you. I can tell you where you spend your money. I can tell you where you spend your time. Because those are your priorities. If I look at where you spend your time, I can tell you that where you spend your time, if you're sitting there looking at a computer for 10 hours a day, if it's not your job, but if you're sitting there looking at a computer all day long, searching the internet or your phone, I got a new phone, I can't figure it out. I don't have a clue. I can't do anything on it. But if you sit there and you look at that thing all the time, what's your priority? Your phone. If you're sitting in a conversation with somebody, what do you tell that person? Yeah, you're second to my phone or anything else going on in the world. If you had a dinner with somebody, if you had a meal with somebody, and you on your phone, you're telling that person at the meal with you, I like you, but you're not my priority. What's going on here is my priority. Have you ever thought about that? Mm-hmm. So the best thing you can do is to put that phone away and put it in your pocket. It doesn't mean you can't use the technology that's been given to us today. That's great. But don't let it take away from the personal aspect of being able to share time with a spouse or with your children or with your neighbor or whoever you sat down to break meal with or whoever you're spending time with. Get rid of it. Spend some time. Get to know somebody. So many people, they can't even have a conversation, but they can text you. You look at young people, they'll sit across the table at a restaurant, and they won't say a word, but they'll be texting each other. They don't know how to even talk. They don't know how to communicate as human beings to one another. I got off on the money tree, I'm sorry. But anyway, what I've been trying to say is we need to take care of what's inside of us. Right? And some of us say, well, you know, I get most of it right. That's great. Congratulations. I'm glad. At least you're trying. At least you're trying. But we still need to search for those things that are, you know, if most of your refrigerator was clean, but you had one piece of Tupperware in the back filled with a science project, is that good enough? Is that clean enough? No. You need to get rid of the thing that stinks in your life, that thing that's holding you back, that thing that is keeping you from being the person that God would have for you to be. Right? He gives a whole list of things here that he doesn't hold back. He doesn't make you guess. He doesn't make you guess what makes you unclean. If you look at the list, if you go back and look at the list, what does he say? He says, from out of the hearts of men. He doesn't say from their imagination. He's talking about what's inside, what makes you. He said, from out of the hearts of men proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lewdness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these things coming inside, from your heart, from who you are. Right? You have to get the stench out of there and say, well, I got 9 out of 10 right. You got to get rid of that 10th one too. You can't hold on to any of those things that separate you from God. It's keeping you from being the person that God wants you to be. It's keeping that connection, that relationship at bay. Right? If you're married, and you turn to your spouse and say, you know, I've done everything for you. I cook and I clean and I've done everything, but there's this one thing. There's this one thing. You know, I've cheated on you multiple times. Multiple times. It's just one thing. I didn't murder you. I didn't steal from you. I didn't have bad thoughts about you. I've given you my whole self except for this one thing. How do you think that relationship's going to go? Probably not too good. Can we? Probably not. There's probably going to be some trust issues. There's going to be some bumpy road issues. There's going to be some issues in that relationship that keep it from being all that it could be. Can we agree on that? Would you say? Yes. Okay. So what I'm saying to you is that when you keep something inside, when you keep those things inside of you, when you fail to do the things that God would have you to do, you're hurting that relationship with God as well. Right? Now, I won't go through the whole list, but let's just look at a couple things. Coveting. How many of you covet something? Do you know? Do you know what covet is? You know, it comes from the Greek word meaning to have more. In other words, we always want to what? Have more. I have a 1,200 square foot house, but you know what I need to have? More. I need to covet, or I want that 2,000 square foot house. And I have that 2,000 square foot house, but I want my neighbor's 3,000 square foot house. Or I have a car that runs, but what I need is a Jaguar, or a Mercedes, or a Lexus. And if you have those things, maybe you just need a driver. A driver's not a bad thing, I can tell you from personal experience. But you need something more, right? To not have enough is what it's telling me. Whatever I have is never going to be enough. And you know what's wrong with that? When you're coveting something, you're putting yourself in competition with other people. You're like, I have a lot, but EB's got more. And I want what EB's got. And EB's sitting there saying, well, I got a lot, but I want what Ronnie's got. And Ronnie's sitting there saying, well, I got a lot, but I want what Jimmy's got. We're competing with each other, but not only that, we're competing with God. We're saying, God, what you blessed me with, that's not enough. That's not enough. That's like getting an engagement ring and say, well, let's give it to your fiance, and they say, this is nice. But it's not enough. I like one carrot, but two would look a lot nicer on his hand. It's not being thankful for what you have. And we should all be thankful for what we have. And coveting's first cousin is pride. None of us are proud. None of us suffer from this, do we? I know I'm preaching to the choir. There's no proud people here, only humble people here. You know, the funny thing is the word pride comes, not only is it the peak of all vices, but it comes from the Greek words that means that we may never be discovered. That we can walk around and we can parrot humility, we can act like we're humble, but deep down inside, we're looking down on people. We think we're better than them. Interesting, isn't it? You say, well, I don't think I'm better than somebody else. Really?
Yeah.
You don't? So if you're driving down the road and somebody swerves and cuts you off, or pulls in front of you, not cuts you off, but just pulls in front of you, they don't have a right to be in front of you, do they? They're not as good as me. My taxes have probably paid for most of this road. I'm not sure they paid any taxes at all. What kind of sorry people are they? Get in front of me. Slow down like that, right? But even those innermost thoughts make us think that we're better than someone else, don't they? And we look down on them. That's called pride. That we think we're better than other people. Now, let me ask you this. Does that fit into Christ's expectation of us? You see, if you're wholeheartedly loving God, that's a place of servitude. We're not saying we're God's equal. We're not to be feeling like we're better than God, or to be considered equal with God. We come to worship. That's from a place of love. And then we're supposed to love our neighbors. Most difficult thing in the world sometimes. Still, yet, we're called to do it, and we're supposed to do it from a place that originates where? Inside. Not to put on a show. I'm not going to go rake my neighbor's leaves because it looks good. You know, it looks good to those people watching. Here I am. Anybody taking a picture? Yeah. It's going to be in the paper. You know, we don't do it for that reason. We do it because we have a genuine concern for somebody who's not able to maybe rake their leaves themselves, who can't do for themselves, and because they're our neighbor and because we love them, then we go out and do things for them, never ever expecting anything in return. I don't want to be paid for it. You don't owe me your gratitude. I'm just doing this for you because I love you. That's interesting. What an interesting concept. Isn't that what Christ did for us? He came down and helped us out, didn't he? He came down and died for our sins. You, me, everyone's sins. What an interesting concept. To love without expecting something in return. That's what we're called to do. You see, and that's a tough thing. And it requires change. It requires change, and it requires deliberate change. It's not something that's going to happen by accident. It takes some soul searching. It takes some looking inside and saying, you know, I'm getting a lot of it right today. I'm getting a lot of things right today. I'm doing a lot of things right today, but how could I be better? How could I be a better husband? How could I be a better neighbor? How could I be a better father or a better mother? How could I do those things better and show God's love? Let me be a reflection of God's love. And how can I improve my relationship with God? How can I get these things out of my life that make things unpleasing to God? How can I get this sin out of my life? How can I get this little rust spot? How can I get this garbage, this stink that's in the Tupperware? How can I get that out of my life? Right? How can I remove it? First thing is you got to recognize it's there, right? You got to find it in the fridge. You got to say, okay, I'm looking. I see where the stench is coming from, and I'm going to remove it. It's going to be a purposeful thing. I'm going to go after it. I'm going to remove it. I'm going to make an effort each and every day. If I can't make a drastic change, to remove at least a little bit of it every day until it's gone. Right? The Tupperware is not bad. It's what's inside it that causes the stink. Because the Tupperware is still good. It's still useful. God's saying to you, you're useful. I got a purpose for you, but you got to get the stink out of your life. You got to get those things that are unpleasing to me, that sin, those things that are hurting our relationship, those things that are breaking us down. You need to get rid of those so you can serve the purpose for which I've designed you for. You see, that Tupperware can be used again, but it needs to be cleaned out. Nobody's going to take the Tupperware filled with a science project and add some chicken and dumplings in there and hope that it turns out okay. Am I right? I mean, I know those chicken and dumplings are good. I mean, one of my favorites. But even on top of that, I'm not eating. I'm not eating that. I'm sorry. So we know if we want to get to where we're going, we got to clean it out. No, that's going to be up to you. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to point out your faults or where you might be coming up short, because I have to look inside myself. I'm not a perfect person either. I need to always look for ways that I can be a better husband, that I can be a better father, that I can be a better neighbor. And to make sure that I don't have anything in my life that's separating me from God. So I'm not asking you to do something that I'm not doing for myself. What I'm saying is we all need to be in the party. We all need to be cleaning the refrigerator out. We all need to be looking inside and cleaning ourselves out. You believe it? If you believe it and you receive it, if you're dedicated to going home today and not cleaning out your refrigerator, but looking inside. Looking inside and saying, how can I be better? And then acting on it. If you're with me on that, if you'll join me on that, won't you join me as all God's people say, Amen.